Defining the worst movies of all time isn't as simple as pointing to bad acting or weak scripts. Plenty of films are flawed, but still manage to entertain or gain cult followings. The truly worst movies go a step further. They're baffling in concept, painful in execution, and often leave you wondering how they were ever greenlit in the first place. Whether they're high-profile disasters, misguided sequels, or passion projects gone horribly wrong, these films have earned their reputations through a mix of confusion, cringe, and cinematic chaos. Here are 10 of the absolute worst movies ever made. Watch at your own risk. So, the 10th worst movie of all time on our list is Movie 43. Since Movie 43 is just a collection of disconnected skits, there's no real narrative to follow. And even the individual segments are absurd and thin on substance. The only consistent thread is its reliance on shock humour, oddly paired with a baffling lineup of A-list actors. Everyone involved seems far too talented for the material, leaving you to wonder how they were talked into it. In the end, it's a painfully unfunny, chaotic mess. One of those infamous comedies best left forgotten. No matter how curious you are, it's not worth a second of your time. And the 9th worst movie of all time is Fateful Findings. Neil Breen is undeniably an auteur, though not in the traditional good filmmaker sense. His films, especially Fateful Findings, are uniquely his. There's really nothing else like them. Maybe Megalopolis comes close in ambition, but it lacks Breen's unintentional charm. Trying to summarize Fateful Findings is almost pointless. A man with mysterious powers, a messy love triangle, and a mission to expose global corruption. It throws everything at the wall, delivered with some of the most bizarrely hilarious performances imaginable. Intentional or not, who knows? And the 8th worst movie of all time is The Legend of the Titanic. 2 years after James Cameron's iconic Titanic, 1999's The Legend of the Titanic took a wildly different and wildly bizarre approach to the infamous tragedy. This animated musical reimagines the sinking ship with talking animals, a shape-shifting octopus, and a strangely cheerful ending where, somehow, everyone survives. It's an unapologetic fever dream, and while you might excuse its tone by saying it's just for kids, the very concept of a light-hearted, child-friendly Titanic movie feels absurd. The result is a surreal, tonally confused mess that's oddly fascinating, despite its clunky animation and painfully bad voice acting. And on number 7, we have Alone in the Dark. Say what you will about Uwe Boll, but the man's persistence is something else. He thrives on the backlash, almost seeming to feed off the criticism, and somehow keeps making movies despite the near-universal panning. His output may not win many fans, but it clearly finds just enough of an audience to keep him going. Alone in the Dark is one of his most notoriously bad films, loosely based on the video game in name only. What you get instead is a bland zombie flick that fails as horror, action, and adaptation alike. It's chaotic, confusing, and unmistakably a Boll production. And the 6th worst movie is Catwoman. Catwoman holds a certain infamous status among DC movies, but with over 20 years behind it, there's a chance it might stir up some nostalgia. It's peak early 2000s in all the best and worst ways. Campy humor, clunky CGI, and an over-the-top style that's hard to take seriously. At its core, it's a pretty generic superhero origin story, but the execution is what really sets it apart. Everyone involved seemed to be making a different movie, resulting in a messy final product. Whether that mess is entertaining or maddening really depends on how much chaos you're willing to embrace. And on number 5, we have Mitchell. You would think action movies would be hard to mess up. Simple plots, big explosions, and clear heroes usually do the trick. But then there's Mitchell, which somehow misses the mark on nearly every level. The film centers on a reckless cop whose chaotic approach to taking down a couple of drug runners borders on parody. Whether it's aiming for comedy, satire, or a gritty cop thriller is anyone's guess. It never fully commits to any of them. At times, it's baffling. At others, just plain boring. Still, Mitchell is undeniably something, whatever that means. And the fourth worst movie of all time on our list is 2025, The World Enslaved by a Virus. Back in 2025, The World Enslaved by a Virus was already unintentionally hilarious as a sci-fi take on the near future. Watching it now, in the actual year 2025, only makes it more absurd. In this version of reality, Christianity is banned, communism has taken over, COVID-19 nearly ended civilization, and, perhaps most outrageously, ice cream no longer exists. On top of the bizarre premise, the film is a mess from every angle. Awkward acting, cringeworthy dialogue, laughable action, and a jarring ending followed immediately by a blooper reel. If it's meant to be a parody, maybe it's secretly brilliant, but if not, it's one for the Cinematic Hall of Shame. And the third worst movie is Attack Force. Steven Seagal may be a recognizable name in martial arts cinema, but it's debatable whether he's truly earned that reputation. Aside from the passable Under Siege, his filmography is a string of forgettable or outright bad action flicks, and Attack Force might be among the worst. This should have been a straightforward revenge-driven action movie, but it falls apart in spectacular fashion. It's about as successful as Sniper Special Ops is at being a compelling war film, which is to say, not at all. Seagal spends most of the movie sluggishly mumbling and drifting through scenes until the thankfully short runtime ends, though it somehow feels twice as long. And the second worst movie is Son of the Mask. Since the early 2000s, Robert Rodriguez has delivered some chaotic and visually loud family sci-fi adventures. But even his messiest films look like masterpieces next to Son of the Mask. The film shares a similarly overdone CGI aesthetic and awkward tone, but with none of the charm or appeal for kids or adults. Rather than serving as a true sequel to The Mask, it feels like a soulless cash-in that barely connects to the original. What you get instead is a bizarre, over-the-top fever dream of a movie that fails on almost every level. It's often cited as one of the worst sequels of the century, and honestly, that's a pretty fair assessment. And the last worst movie of all time on our list is She's Out of Control. She's Out of Control is one of those rare bad movies where simply explaining the plot is enough to make you question why it was ever made. It centers on a widowed father with an odd, uncomfortable relationship with his teenage daughters, who are pushed into wild dating behavior by his new girlfriend. While unsettling storylines can work with the right tone and talent, World's Greatest Dad being a great example thanks to Robin Williams' performance, this film completely misses the mark. No one involved seems to know how to handle the material, and the result is a cringe-worthy mess that's likely forgotten for good reason among 80s comedies. Know another terrible movie we missed? Let us know in the comments. And for more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.